Oh.
Yes, good afternoon and welcome. Here we are with author, speaker, coach, Dr Hercules Collius. And my name's Michael Daverin, and I'm here to say hello to my old friend and colleague, Dr Hercules Collius. Welcome, Herc, and welcome to all our listeners out there. We thought this would be a good opportunity to have a chat and chew the fat a bit and just sort of get our heads around what's going on, but also hear what's happening with you as well. But first and foremost, Dr. Hercules Collius, welcome to your own Facebook page.
Okay, so it's funny hearing you call me Dr. Hercules Collius.
I know there's a lot of syllables involved.
Me Herc and worse for 20 years. So
now, come on, that's not fair. I'm always polite. I'm always polite.
Yes.
How are you?
Yeah, look, I'm as good as everyone else.
Relatively speaking, you're doing well.
Yeah, it's quite an interesting time that we're all going through, and
yes.
There's the doctor side of me, that part of my life has been completely usurped by half a life form, a little virus that has stopped the planet, and there's a lot of restructuring. Obviously, people preparing for what I hope won't be a huge peak. I'm really, we're doing as much as we possibly can to make sure that that we don't experience some of the tragedy that we're seeing around the world, So, beyond that, the other side, it's all quietened down. Talking to a lot of people on video conference or on audio or whatever it might be, and just getting used to what I think will be a new way of being, and also, a new opportunity too. I think there's a silver lining to this very, very grey, thick cloud at the moment. So yeah, that's why. And initially, it was right now. It's so hectic for me. I didn't even want to do any of this, and it was only after creating a Facebook group when I thought I just.
I should point out we are having some, like everyone, having some bandwidth issues. So if we drop in and out, it's just the bandwidth where everyone's using the same network at once. So bear with us. Sorry, Herc, you dropped out a little bit there.
Yeah, I'm saying, so I've had a lot of people call me and say, well, what do I do with this or that? How do I go through this moment? What's the best way to, I guess, get out the other side of it, being a better, brighter? And so that's what I love. That's what I love talking about. But in this moment, with this crazy timetable and, what I have to do at the hospital and so on, because now we're dealing with just emergencies, elective surgeries are over, but emergencies are not.
Yeah.
So I'm kind of on call for that. So my time is shifting all the time. I thought a Facebook group would be the way to go about it. But then you, young man, have been doing all this testing with platforms and podcasting and a new radio show of your own, which I thought was awesome. I heard.
Well, experimental radio.
Yeah, but, experimentally, I really enjoyed it. So it was really good.
There we are.
And you were the one who suggested that we do this. And I thought, okay, why not?
Well, because there's a lot of, there's a real upsurge in new media and online webinars and so on, which are fantastic. I've attended a few myself and seen what other people are doing, and they're doing some fantastic work. And it's really great to see people doing that. But I just thought, well, why don't we just sort of have a conversation and no sort of pre-prepared slides or anything like that, but just have a chat about what you're going through, what your perspective is. And also what the listeners are going through, and also give people an opportunity to call in, a bit like the old-fashioned radio shows, a bit like one of your favourite shows. I remember was Frasier, wasn't it? I remember you used to love that show. So that kind of style. Why not?
Hercules, and I'm listening.
yeah. Except hopefully less chaotic.
I don't know how relevant it is now.
No. Well, it was the 90s. Is anything from the 90s relevant? So yes. That's why we're here. Obviously. The big thing to point out out there, you're a doctor, but we're not here to give you medical advice specifically, are we?
No, I can't do that because I don't, if you can't see someone examine and have a conversation about symptoms, specific things, you can never do that. But I'm here more in for people who don't know me, my background is in neuroscience and psychology, and then medicine and surgery.
Mm.
So I've had dual parallel careers for a long time. One with personal development and executive coaching, leadership training, blah blah, and the other one as a doctor, right? And so these days I do mostly assisting in surgery from the medical side, but my passion has always been, the personal side. So this is more, I guess, people who are calling me not in my official capacity, but because I do that, what are some things that I know from the insights that I've had from 20 plus years doing this kind of work they're going through right now. And it's when I got all those messages, that's when I sort of started to think this way.
Yeah. Well, I mean, and I'm glad we've been able to fit it into your schedule. You must be exhausted. I mean, really, I know the hours you've been doing. So yeah, thanks for doing this.
Oh no, it's my privilege and my pleasure. It's just last night was the first good night's sleep that I got. So
wow.
Actually, relatively feeling really, really, quite good today.
Oh, well, after this, you can go for a run around the block. Oh, no, hang on, not allowed. So before we
run faster than usual because the police will be chasing me down.
Yeah, true. Yeah, before we sort of get to people who may be listening, just from a broad perspective.
Yep.
I know this is a broad stroke, but how do you? What is your perspective on this whole situation from from your side of the fence in terms of coaching and resilience and the human mind and all that sort of thing? Obviously, now we know what's happening on a physical level with the pandemic, but in terms of what people might be going through, what's your perspective?
Well, I want to be a little bit careful about how I say this because I have a habit of sort of saying the truth a little bit too quickly sometimes. This is either the way that I see it in my head. There's two groups of people that are going through this right now, globally, and if I can use a couple of metaphors, the first group feel like they've been issued a sentence and they're in prison. Right. So if you think about that, it feels like, there are restrictions, there's lockup, there's, only certain times you're allowed to do certain things, now, shower now, personal choices only from this list, all that kind of stuff. Right. And the second group of people are a group of people that feel like they've been issued an opportunity. And those people feel like they're about to enter a cocoon. Okay. And in a cocoon, sure, things are not going to be the same again. Things are going to be ripped apart, pulled apart. But the thing about going to cocoon is that it's an opportunity to say, okay, where are the bits of me that are still in the caterpillar phase that if I had the time to put into a cocoon, I would finally be able to do all the processing that I need to emerge as the butterfly out the other end and spread my wings, show my colors, and fly around and do what I'm supposed to do. And so when those two mindsets, one is the prison mindset, I've been issued a sentence. The other one is the cocoon mindset, I've been issued an opportunity. Both of them are restrictive, but one of them allows you to develop through something, and the other one is really, you being barred up, so to speak, just waiting, getting more and more frustrated. So the first group, the prison group, shall I call them that, from a neuroscience perspective, they're the people that are going into limbic overload at the moment.
And when you say limbic overload, what do you mean by that?
Yeah. Okay. Thanks. I'm so glad you're here, Michael, because
Oh, look, I have no idea. No,
industry. What do you mean you don't know what limbic overload is?
I didn't do very well with neuroscience.
IT, and I rang up. I have had similar experiences in the opposite direction.
But what do you mean when you say limbic system?
Yeah. So basically, the part of our brain that gets overwhelmed with survival and gets overwhelmed with emotion and feelings, media hormones like adrenaline and noradrenaline, and gives us that low grade chronic anxiety. So even if you're not in an anxiety disorder, so to speak, even if you're actually having anxiety in the clinical sense, at a subconscious level, you've got this low grade peaked kind of thinking that's using up resources and energy more than it would be if it was just at a calm and baseline state. So limbic overload just means that. And in the other group, the cocoon group, so to speak, what we've got there is people that are able to deliberately choose emotions that are going to get them through by having thoughts and finding things to get excited about through this. So, for example, what do I want to transform? What part of me has been sitting there, like in a caterpillar stage for forever? What do I look forward to spreading my wings on? What do I want those colors? Where do I want to fly if I had the time? Right. So if you start to think about those things, you then start to have emotions around those things. And those emotions are pleasant emotions. And they will offset what's happening in your brain with all the negative stuff, right? Because there's one part of your brain, the part of your brain that's trying to avoid something terrible, and the part of your brain that's trying to get you to something great are physically different. And both of them going at the same time. So at the moment, because of everything that's happening, because of all the necessary and seemingly ever changing, constantly changing data that are being thrown at us, right? We're into this side of space where, don't do that, don't do this, don't do that. You might get that, you might get this. And it's all information that we need to survive physically. But what that then does to us emotionally is that seeps down and creates like a template of thinking that becomes the way that we think about everything else. And if that happens, then we're just going to sit there afraid, and slowly we're going to start to get the sort of symptoms that we see in people who have, like, cabin fever, that kind of that lethargy, that sense of sadness, or that impatience, the ability to not be able to concentrate on stuff that we're doing. What other things? Food cravings. All the little habits and all the little addictions and things that we normally rely on in a balanced, so to speak, life, in the life that we're used to, I should say, rather than balanced, because they're not really balanced, but in the life that we're used to, intensify in this moment, because we've got this big empty space. And if you're filling it with, I don't want to get this and I don't want to get that, and I should avoid this and I shouldn't do that, that's the space it's going to put us in, as opposed to, no, this is an opportunity for me.
Yeah, right. And so, I mean, would it be right in saying, and I don't want to put words in your mouth, but would it be right in saying that there's no right or wrong state to be in, but it's just having an awareness of which state you're shifting from? Obviously, one is more effective than the other, but can those two states, can you flip flop? Because I'll be honest, like, yes, this week I've been pretty productive, trying to keep positive. Yesterday, I just went. I was a little bit out of it, and I couldn't even bring the washing in on time. I was just not in the right headspace that I had been earlier in the week, and that was concerning me. And whereas today I feel I'm not happy by any means. No one's happy about this at all. But today I felt a bit more in control. So I feel like I've been flipping from a cocoon to a prison.
And it is.
Is that normal?
And that's normal. I mean, there's no such thing as a person who's constantly in a perfect state of growth and expansion and everything's fine. And that doesn't exist in the so-called perfect life. That does not exist.
Right.
So you're definitely doing those things. But if you're only doing one of those things, it's impossible to be perfect, motivated and positive all the time.
Yeah.
But if you allow yourself to be depressed all the time and afraid and anxious, that's bad. If you're not stepping out of that and finding those little things to nibble away at that darkness, then the light, you don't create the little crack in the wall where the light can start to beam in, right?
Right.
It makes all the difference. The tiniest little ray of light will illuminate that whole space. And it doesn't take much. It really doesn't take much for us to feel good going through this time. And don't forget, I will have some practical things around the brain that I want to talk about as we go through this conversation, because I think those things will be useful for people to organize their time, how to think about this space, because we're not used to this space, right? Yeah. It's a new thing. And even if you choose cocoon, well, what does that mean? Right? How do you actually enter the cocoon? What do you do? And we'll talk all about that a little bit further into this little chat. But the other concept that I want to put into people's minds that might be useful is the idea that if you give somebody what they tell you they crave and what they wish they had, you instantly see who they are.
Right.
And because I've seen, I've lost count, obviously, over 20 years, how many people's journeys I've been on with them. And people the number of times I've heard, well, if I only had X, I would be able to do Y. Okay. And X, 90% of the time is money, right? They say, if I had the money to do this or that. And then what happens when people get money, right? You see what happens with lotto winners, right? They suddenly win how many millions of dollars, and then within a couple of years, they're poor again because they don't have any of the habits and the disciplines in place that people who are consistently and predictably wealthy have, right? But here's what I want you to think about, and what I want everyone to really, really grasp onto. Time is another amazing resource that we never have enough of. So instead of saying, if I only had the money, I would do X, well, what would you do if you had the time? And now we've been given the lotto. We've all won the lotto with time. In this particular, we've won the time lotto. And I know I'm not oblivious to the hardship of what's going out there. I've, lots of close friends who are, dealing with lots of stuff at the moment, single mums trying to, do I lose my job? What do I do with my child? People struggling. I've just lost my job. Will the money be enough? Mortgages, et cetera, right? And obviously the government's trying to deal with all of that. And I get all of that. But throughout all of that, if thinking about the government, for example, they're doing stimulus packages with money, right? Let's think of it this way. So if you inject money, you stimulate the economy. What I'm suggesting is if you inject time, you can stimulate your economy. You can choose to do some things with that time that you wouldn't be able to do before. And at the risk of my mind goes to something quite bizarre at the moment. I hope there's not too much of a digression. But at the risk of sounding like the dad from my big fat Greek wedding.
Right.
It comes from the Greek economy. the word economy. But what does that word really mean? It comes from the Greek words ikos and nomos, which means, ikos means home, family, clan, your group, your people.
Yeah.
Nomos means laws, rules, principles of living, management. And is when you put those words together, a person who is an economist, in the original meaning of that word, is a steward, is someone who's looking out for someone or something that they care about. So if we think of it that way, your own economy can be about getting a moment to say, okay, what do I care about? What do I really care about? And having a moment to think about that, not only in isolation, in isolation from the world, but not in isolation from the people with whom you're going to take that journey. It's a very, very special opportunity, even through this time of hardship. And if we start to think about some of these things, then all of this can turn around with as I said, the slightest little crack in that wall that's holding us all back means that, we can illuminate the entire space enough for us to then make the changes that we need in the world.
Great. We've got some people listening. I just want to have a quick shout out to, we've got Melanie. Hello, Melanie. You're listening out there. We've got Nathan. He says, listening now from inside the cocoon. So that's good to hear. We've got Megan. And I think Megan's going to join us shortly. And I should point out too, before anyone sort of leaves any comments about, listen, I don't approve of the racial stereotypes with the accents. I should point out, if it's not completely obvious by your name, you are Greek. So you are allowed to do that voice.
No, I didn't even think that. I didn't think.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You just did a bad rendition of your own accent. I'm being silly. Let's bring a listener in. Let's say hello to Meg, shall we? Meg's joining us, and if that's all right with you, Herc.
Yeah, absolutely.
Now's a good time. Let's say hello to Meg. Hello, Meg. Hail.
Hello, Herc. Long-time listener, first-time caller.
Oh my God!
Wow. Considering this is our first episode, that's amazing.
I know, right? But I have been a long-time listener of Herc for over 15 years. Right. And a lot of what he's saying today makes a lot of sense to me, because the first time I met Herc, I actually had slipped a disc and couldn't walk at all. So I was in a self-enforced cocoon, and Herc was able to help me get through that, to actually go and discover who I really was on the inside, and knock down all of those barriers and all of those things that I'd built up over the years. So what he's actually saying here is really interesting. And I think that on a international, worldwide scale, people have an opportunity now to do just that. And what comes out of that and what sort of authentic world we can start to live in after this will be really interesting to see for those people who are open to it.
That's an interesting point. Sorry.
Thank you. I love it. I would love our conversations, and thank you so much, for being with us today. That's exactly how I feel. I think that right now, what's really unprecedented, people think the virus is unprecedented. It's not really. I mean, we've had big diseases before. It's just they usually come about once in a lifetime, which so in any lifetime it seems like a big deal, and it is. But we don't often see that on the other side, it is a huge opportunity for the world to say, okay, what is really important? Because let me tell you, when I started to think about this, when the first things started to get cancelled, big live events started to get, I'm a speaker, right? So a lot of events are cancelled, and that's a big deal. But they were all put under the heading of non-essential events. So all the things that we all live for, the footy, the sports, the going out, the conferences, that whatever it is, suddenly someone's telling us that all of that is non-essential, right? So it blows my mind to think that, we probably don't think about what is truly important to us enough and create the space for that. It gets lost in the noise of a lot of other things that are shinier and louder and have a lot more fanfare behind them, because a lot of the truth and authenticity is a very quiet thing. I mean,
definitely. But also that point, Herc, about the things that are considered non-essential were, in fact, the entire arts and music and things that actually feed people's soul were considered non-essential.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's heartbreaking, isn't it? Because your background is, you've had a background with bands, live bands, with promotions and with
art galleries.
Galleries, et cetera, right?
And they're all closed.
And they're all closed. It is. It is when you think about art and music and how it can move you. To think beyond our intellect and to just feel, and how important that is. To have something in your life which just makes you feel, something that you can then bring into your thinking to make life better. So yeah, I agree. I absolutely agree with you.
And where is everybody turning in all this? Netflix, full of art, full of film, full of entertainment. Yeah. So I mean, sorry, go ahead.
I said I understand people do that. At the end of the day, in times of stress, we always go back to our most practiced habits. And if the way we de-stress normally is to sit in front of, the TV or to watch Netflix or to stand or whatever your thing is, or to do whatever it's going to be, then that's what you're going to do. What I'm suggesting is, I'm not saying, go cold turkey on all the things that give you comfort, because that's going to exacerbate this moment in a really bad way. What I'm saying is, why don't we take a little bit of this time to do some of the things that we don't think about doing normally, that we wouldn't have done at other times.
I have a question for you, Herc.
Sure.
A lot of people and a lot of things that are popping up on our feeds at the moment.
Sorry, Meg, you're just breaking up a little bit.
Sorry. Yeah, sorry, my internet's a bit funny.
No, join the club. Just say a couple of words.
Hello?
Yeah, breaking up a little bit.
I'll ask, basically, I was going to ask about how
yeah, you've completely gone, Meg. Sorry. What we might get you to just maybe re-enter the chat if we could. Would that be all right? Yeah. Okay, I'll just remove you for a moment. If you can just re-enter and leave the broad.
A lot of people having. And by the way, while Meg's doing that, if people want to come in and join us, what we didn't say at the beginning is that we've got a Facebook group. And the reason I created the Facebook group, it's got the link in it if you want to join us live. Okay. And it'll be where we put up a lot of stuff regarding all of this. I think Meg's back now, so we'll talk about that later. But if you want to go to imhercules.community, that's where the Facebook group is. Just join it and you can be on the show.
We're taking calls.
So, Herc, I was just talking about what we're seeing in our Facebook feeds and the pressure that we're putting on ourselves at the moment in trying to achieve during this time. So I know I'm getting so many things of lose weight, do yoga at home, do, you know, you can become an artist, you can do this, you can do that. And there's a lot of pressure. I was talking to my sister about it yesterday, of suddenly people trying to be like, oh, I'm going to lose 5 kilos in my time in ISO thing. I'm going to homeschool my child. I'm going to full-time work. And there is a lot of pressure in that. What advice do you have for people who are perhaps perfectionists? I'm asking for a friend, of course, and are putting pressure on themselves in this situation to be trying to do it all?
Yeah, that's a brilliant question. I think when I spoke before about going into a cocoon, what I'm not talking about is going into cocoon to finish that business that you never thought you'd get off the ground and all that kind of stuff. Because that's a to-do thing. And you know, I mean, we've had this conversation before, but you know how about to be and to do, right? Everybody's got a to-do list. But unless you know who you are, your to-do list, you don't even know if it's relevant to you. So it's the old be, do, have, right? And I know this has been done, you know, ad nauseam, but just excuse me for using it now just because it's quicker to talk this way. But, you know, most people start with what they want, what I want to have, then they decide what they have to do. And now suddenly there's a bit of time. So I'm going to do that to end up having what I want to have. And they end up becoming someone they may not necessarily recognize or like, or have to become oblivious to in order to continue life with some sort of level of comfort. What I'm suggesting is this is a time for you to go into the cocoon to see who you are. Because the minute you see, I was going to say, the minute you see that, then there are only certain things that you're going to be able to do. And those things are all fulfilling for you because they're based on who you are. They're made for you. They're like a lock and a key.
And does that mean, so, you know, you're not kind of saying the cocoon is where you go and do. It's the cocoon is where you go and be, and it is that quiet time to actually sit with yourself. And sometimes that can be incredibly uncomfortable.
A few things there.
But ultimately rewarding.
Yeah, I'm going to go through. Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. I've actually got 7 brain functions that 7 exercises your brain needs for you. Well, and it's not everything you do in the cocoon, but we'll go through those in a little while, and that'll give people a bit more of a practical understanding of what that feels like in the cocoon. But yeah, absolutely. What I'm saying is we are so distracted from the things that in everyday life. Let's face it, our lives aren't perfect. A lot of us are doing things because we have to, because we're afraid of not being able to pay bills. We're afraid of losing this or losing that or whatever it might be. But what we need to do is to remember that that when we're entering this space, all of those things are going to still be terrifying us, but they're the distractions. All this is a moment to be without distractions. Sorry, Meg, we just lost you there for a second. Are you back with us?
Yeah, I'm back.
Yeah, that's all right.
Technology.
So all I'm saying is that, there's distractions, and we're not going to have those distractions, as many of them now. So what are we going to choose to grow in a small moment of opportunity that's distraction free, right? And I don't know, do you think this is the right moment for me to go into the brain functions and the exercises, guys? Do you think do that now? Or do you want to talk about something else? Yeah?
Why not, if it's appropriate?
Yeah, okay. So here's what I want you to think about. Your brain, I mean, there's a lot of things. This is not the entire thing. And a lot of you were saying, well, this is not just it. There's more. And of course, there's more. We can't do everything in just the time that we've got. But when you think of your brain and a healthy brain, your brain needs a lot of different types of activity to stay sane, right? And it doesn't often get all of the things that it needs. But as I go through these 7 things that your brain needs, which, that this is not my original work. This is work that was done by neuroscientists and psychologists, 20-something years ago. People like Dan Siegel, who's written lots of books, David Rock. There's a lot of people that have written about this, right? But I just want to bring it into this context and give it to you in a format that is usable for you right now. As we go through each of these things, I want you to think, okay, why would I do this? For what reason? Where would I do this? And I'll talk about that, the importance of that afterwards. And with whom will I do this? So why and for what, where and with whom. So here's the first thing. The first thing is focus time. Your brain actually needs something to do deep work with. It needs something that's going to take it into a deep space where it's so deep and it's thinking purely about one problem in a very deep, rich, neurally rich way. So set a goal, something that you want to think about, and it doesn't have to be work, although you can use your work for this in this particular instance, because that might be where you can do focus time, right? But when you think of focus time, think now, why would you do it? It might be your work. For what? It might be work, as we said. Where and with whom? Now, the where part is important because you now have just one space, your home, to do all of these 7 different functions. And the next 6 we'll talk about in a second, right? But when you do all of these different functions, you cannot do them in the same physical place. Now, you might think, well, how am I going to do them? Because I'm stuck in a little apartment, or I'm just at home and I don't have a room for each of these. I don't have 7 rooms to go do this stuff. It's just really important to understand that your environment is going to make or break this for you, right? So, for example, with focus time or work time, you need to have a place in your house. If you've got just one room, it might be your living room. It might be you putting a chair in front of your TV, facing away from the TV and looking towards a table. So your perspective is work. If you've only got one table and it's in your kitchen, well, maybe you clear it of anything and you just put your computer on it when you're doing work. But when you're going to be there cooking and doing other things, and which we'll talk about later, you might put a tablecloth on there or something else. So it visually changes the physical sensation of what you're experiencing. Because when you go to work, the reason work works is because you go there and the lights are work lights, the people noise is work noise, your desk is work, your boss is in the other room, whatever it might be. And all of those things are stimuli, environmental stimuli that are telling you got to work now. And if you don't do that in your own home and you do things like, well, I'm just going to sit in bed, just going to sit in bed, do some work now, and then later put the work down, maybe go do some cooking, come back, eat in bed, put the TV on, bring it in the bedroom, because, and all of that, you're not going to do any of these things in a way that satisfies your brain. What you end up doing is just your brain reads it as one thing, and it then feels like it's missing out on everything else. So it's really important, even with the smallest space, even if you have one room, you've got 4 corners and you've got 3 ways you can look from the center of that room out. And as ridiculous as that may sound, the environmental impact is going to make or break that. So it's really, really important. I can't stress that enough. So the first thing is focus time. The second thing is connection time. We need to connect with other people. And Michael, I was listening to Lockdown Radio yesterday, and you guys made the comment about the distinction between social distancing and physical distancing. And I loved it. I loved it. I'm constantly differentiating that, because the term social distancing is a little bit unfortunate, in my opinion. What it should be is physical distancing.
Yeah, and there was a study coming out of RMIT yesterday, among other places, saying the same thing, that, it needs to be referred to differently.
Yeah, so physical distancing is really important right now to get through what we need to get through, because if we don't do that, obviously we're going to see some really bad consequences in our country, which we're trying to avoid, right? But connecting with other people is absolutely essential. And we've never had so many ways in which to connect with people before. We can go on Facebook, can go on any of these platforms, and be able to keep in touch with people and connect. Connection is important. Now, physical connection is really important as well, which is why the people in our home, in our family, are really important right now. We're going to discover that we're going to be connecting with them more than we usually do. It won't be rushed during breakfast on my way out to work. It won't be, read you a quick bedtime story because I've just got home from work and you need to go to bed now. Okay. It won't be, do you see what I mean? There'll be so many different opportunities to really discover each other. And that to your brain is wonderful, is absolutely wonderful. So focus time, connection time. The third one is time in. Now, what does time in mean? Because obviously when you're talking about lockdown, it looks like—
I was going to say, I've got plenty of that at the minute.
That's right. But time in is more about, when you quietly reflect internally and you focus on what your feelings are, what you're seeing in your mind's eye, in your imagination, what your thoughts are. It's not analyzing them, thinking about things, worrying about a problem. It's simply, hey, I'm doing a little stock take on myself right now. I'm doing a little audit. I'm just having a look at what's happening. Oh, look at me. Oh, I'm thinking about this right now. Oh, that's interesting. Just let your mind wander, but be aware of what it's doing. I'm feeling this right now. I'm feeling a little down. Oh, I'm actually feeling a little up over now. So I'm feeling this. And it's really just self-observation without analysis or judgment.
I saw a funny meme yesterday along those lines about resetting things a bit. It was all the angels in heaven looking down at earth saying to each other, have they tried to stop it and restart it?
Yes, exactly. Exactly.
Sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off.
No, go for it.
In the interest of staying connected, Meg, by the way, let me know when you want to come back in. And I'm going to bring somebody else in. His name is Nathan, and connect with him. But Herc, please continue on that thought. But first of all, hello, Nathan. Oh, Nathan, turn the speaker down.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, you got to turn your speaker down.
Turn my speaker down. Hold on.
Yeah, Nathan. Echoing.
We're hearing echo. This reminds me of a dream last night. Nathan, have you got any monitors on there? Oh, I'm just going to
actually
troublemaker.
Do that.
Sorry, Herc, continue.
No, I love live, don't you? It's fantastic.
The first time we've done this, so yeah.
Yeah, time in, just to bring us back. We had focus time, which was deep work, connection time, connecting person to person. It's going to be through social media or physically with the people in our own space. Time in is time internally, spending time internally, not judging or worrying about what we're thinking of, which means that all that's doing, that function is I can self-reflect. I have the ability, my apparatus understands and can work, and it can look inwards. I have a vision, I can see what's happening outside, but I can also see what's happening inside. The next one is physical time, all right? And this is where your body needs to help your brain. And this is where you need to move your body aerobically if medically possible, okay? So exercise, we know, and when I say exercise, I mean taking a few deliberate steps, going to the backyard and walking up and down, until you do 10,000 steps. It's not going to the gym or, getting a home gym or, getting a train, all that kind of stuff, because a lot of people can't do that stuff or don't have those things, but that's not even necessary. What your brain detects as exercise is when you just do a bit of aerobic exercise, something that gets your heart pumping. And for all you need to do is 20 minutes a day or even a few times a week. And what that does, it'll increase some hormones in your body, which will make you feel better. It'll increase endorphins. It'll also increase a thing called BDNF, which is brain-derived neurotropic factor, which, long story short, helps your brain create new connections. It helps your brain become more neuroplastic, right?
I think my brain's becoming more neuroplastic just trying to recite that. Can you say that again?
Yes, BDNF. It doesn't matter what the name of it is. All that's important is that if you spend 3 or 4 times a week doing 20 minutes of exercise, which just means walking up and down, doing a few squats by gently, carefully holding onto the side of something while you do it so you don't fall over. This is not high-end, heavy, hard-hitting stuff. This is not, come on, let's do it, in your pump class or whatever it is, which we can enjoy in a different time when we're all back. This is now, what do I do in my house to keep my body going, but also to give my brain a body in which to reside, which is supporting its health, right? So this is from a brain's perspective. The brain saying, I'm could you please just move yourself off that couch and walk up and down for a little bit, because that'll give me the opportunity to pump out some of these hormones, and I'll feel a lot better about that. And so will you, by the way. That's what that is. The next one is playtime. Now, playtime is when you allow your brain to just be spontaneous, creative, like a child. Like, it's all about novel experiences. Now, normally what people do for this kind of thing is we go away, we go on holidays, we go to a place we've never been to before. There are none of our regular cues. Everything's a novelty. We can start to experience the world, but we don't have that option right now, right? So what we have to do while we're in this situation is maybe see the world through someone else's eyes. So ask your kids what they're feeling right now. Ask your kids what they think, what they're seeing. Ask the other people in your house. What do they experience in this moment? How do they interpret this? What do they believe about that? And you will start to, your brain will go, oh, I don't think about things that way. And that will be your playtime. And of course, there's playtime if you have kids, or if, it doesn't, you don't have to have kids, but whatever it is in your environment, you may actually play a game, just a game, a board game or something like that, just anything. There's a plethora of things that you can look up and Google that you can, just play at home that give you that little bit of spontaneous, creative, I'm not doing any deep work. Your brain is still engaged in experiencing new things. The other thing you can do, of course, is read and experience new things that way as well. But don't read, analyze, and learn. Just making that distinction.
I think Meg had a good example.
Yeah, I think Herc's probably seen this one on my Facebook page recently, but I have a 6-year-old, and like most parents, I'm juggling full-time work, bit of homeschooling that's a bit unstructured at the moment, and this week Mary Poppins came to teach my 6-year-old daughter and her class full of her stuffed animals, and for most of the day I stayed in character as Mary Poppins and taught her various reading, writing, mathematics, speaking only as Mary Poppins as one dots. And it not only broke up her day and her learning, but it also gave me it made that day feel different, and it made that day broken up from the rest of the other days, and it didn't feel like such a task to be trying to come up with these things. And I do have a really new appreciation for teachers, because I think they're just amazing at looking after our kids on a day in, day out.
Yeah, absolutely. Can I take the opportunity to say all hail teachers and essential services, doctors, nurses, the lot? Can I just have a big shout out to them? I know that's a trite thing to say and everyone's saying it, but really.
No. Just while we're on that, because I see my colleagues, what they're going through, especially the ones that are, really, really in the absolute trenches with all of this. And please thank them, not just by thanking them, but by being safe, just following the guidelines and not becoming someone they have to look after in hospital. Just stay healthy. Prevention is better than cure than right now. So thank you, Michael, for saying that. I appreciate it.
No, not at all. I've just brought another essential service, which is Nathan Seiler. I brought him in. Hello, Nathan.
Hello there.
Hey, how's it going, Nathan? It's good you stepped out of your cocoon with the echo so we can actually hear you for a second.
Very nice. Good afternoon, gentlemen.
And this is resonating with you, obviously?
Yes, it is. I thought you were talking about me.
Yeah,
I'm in the cocoon right now.
7 billion people perhaps might find it interesting too.
I thought it was special.
You are.
I might just let you continue, her, because you got up to. I'm just going to drop. Just mute Nathan and Meg just for a minute, but let me know, guys, when you want to jump back in. Also, if anyone else is listening who wants to come on and ask anything, please use the link that's in the Facebook group and the Facebook page. But Herc, you were saying the last one you were talking about was 5 playtime. So I mean, I know I'm experimenting with a few different things with colleagues, and I work a lot in improvisation and performance and comedy stuff at times, occasionally, air quote comedy. And I'm talking to people who in my sort of sphere online about just throwing a few ideas around in the true nature of improvisation, and that's been helpful. But so yeah, I mean, I'd be interested to hear what other people are doing to have a bit of playtime. But if you want to continue on that, line.
Sure. Okay, so we've got 2 more to go. So it's done so far: focus time, connection time, time internally, physical time and exercise, playtime, and the next one is downtime. Okay, now this is a little bit tricky because the brain has functions we don't fully understand, and these are all approximations, by the way, but good ones, useful ones. So downtime is different from playtime and all of that, sort of thing. It's more when you're completely not focused. Whereas internal time is you're being aware of what's happening but not judging it, and playtime, you're being aware of new things and being stimulated by new things and trying to learn. Downtime is literally no goal, no agenda, no focus. It's literally letting your mind wander and letting it go wherever it wants to go. It's daydreaming. It's complete aimlessness. It's how I got through most of my primary school and secondary school. How I got through school most of my life. But yes, like a daydreamer. But it's basically no focus, nothing. So if you can imagine just sitting there and you don't care what your mind's doing. It's just doing it by itself and you're letting it. It's sitting there purely as a physical container for your brain that just wants to do its own little thing. Run around. It's like you take your dog to the park and you let it off the leash and just let the dog run around and have some fun. That's what you're doing with your brain.
What about if you're, if I know I can only speak for myself. If you're prone to doing that, and then your mind slips into the prison cell you talked about earlier,
Yeah.
is there a risk of that? What happens then?
Yeah. So then you go to time internally, and you just recognize that you've done that without judging it or worrying about it, because awareness is its own treatment. Before people worry, well, what do I do when? But very often, just being aware of something disables its impact. It just stops it dead in its tracks, right? And it's a very powerful thing. Just calling something out for what it is without judging it, without worrying about it, without stressing about what to do about it, but just acknowledging it. Here I am. I was letting my brain go. All my brain wants to do is worry about X. It's not that your brain wants to do that. All that means is that the habits you've set up about the way you experience the world, the things that make you safe in the world, include worrying about things. And now your brain's doing what it thinks you want it to do in this particular situation. Isn't that interesting to observe and to learn about yourself right now?
Yeah. I'm wondering what other people think. I've just got a couple of shout outs here, Herc, if you don't mind. Troy is listening. Troy,
Hey.
Thank you for listening. Hope you're well. If you want to jump on and say anything, feel free. The link is in the comments. And Herc, continue, please. Number 7.
Okay, number 7. Drum roll.
Hang on, quick. Let me get the soundboard. Where's the soundboard? There we go. This is off the cuff, guys.
The last one is everyone's going to sort of roll their eyeballs because we think we all know this one.
We will not roll our eyeballs. I promise. Guys, Meg, Nathan, Troy, everyone else listening, we won't roll our eyeballs. Okay. Promise. Go ahead.
Sleep time.
Oh, for God's sake. Yes, sleep time.
Exactly. Okay.
Good night, everybody.
Yeah, good night. Yes. It's good night from Michael. It's good night.
No, continue.
Because sleep, we know that the brain actually needs quite a few hours to sleep. The brain, when we sleep, our body, and if some of you have read all the literature on this a little bit more recently than I have, there may be some tweaks to this. So don't write in or call me and say, well, actually it's this or that. Just bear with me. It's a ballpark statement. It's been a while since I read all the medical literature on sleep. But one thing that I do know is that your body will relax and sleep first, and your brain, once all that's done, will then sleep. So if you think of it that way, even though it's not, 100% scientifically correct, that statement, but as a practical statement that will help you in your behavior, it's a very good statement to think. Your body, all the repairs, everything your body has to do will do what it does when it sleeps. Your brain will kind of sleep usually in the 7th or 8th hour. So get a good night's sleep. Just because you don't feel physically tired doesn't mean that your brain isn't tired. So just understand that your brain needs rest. And the reason it needs rest is because what it does then, now I'm going to date myself now, Michael. I'm going to go all the way back to the 1990s when computers used to do things called defrag. Now we don't even know what that term means, but when you got lots of files and you got little bits of files and lots of clutter on your hard drive, it's like going through, deleting all the little bits of broken files, cleaning up all the double files, cleaning up everything, putting everything, organizing everything. And usually your brain will do that in that time. And sometimes it does it through dreams. Dreams sometimes can be a way of using bits and pieces that are kind of little dead ends and blind ending loops and putting them into a meaningful sequence or story that makes sense to your subconscious and packaging it away nicely that way, right? That's just one way. But there's lots we don't know about the brain, right? So that's why sleep is really, really, really important. So
well, Nathan, sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, no, I was just going to recap.
No, go, please.
So deep work, focus time, work time, connecting with others, whether it's physically or through technology, time internally where we're focusing, not judging, we're just looking at ourselves and what's happening, physical time where we're doing some sort of aerobic activity 20 minutes, 3 times a week, more if we can, which is creating the right soup for the brain to be in, so to speak. Playtime where it's about new and spontaneous things, different ways of looking at things. Downtime, no focus on anything, just let your mind wander, take it off its leash. And then sleep time where you give it rest and you allow it to put things in place and to get itself sorted the way that it does. And when you think about how you're going to do all of these things, think, why am I doing it and for what? Where am I going to do this physically? In what space have I allocated for this to happen? And with whom? And some things you do by yourself and some things you might do together as a family or whatever. But the where is really important, because if you can create a physical environmental stimulus that supports this particular brain function, your brain thinks that, well, that's what we're doing right now. And it'll help you. So, yeah, that's all I want to say there.
No, it's fantastic stuff. And all this information is, all these points we've got on the Facebook page if anyone wants to go back and refer to them. On that sleeping point, Nathan's said here that he literally woke up from his siesta to join us here today. And I find when I'm working, like when I can, like especially at the moment, if I get to a point of the day and I just think I just need 10 minutes and I shut my eyes and my brain literally just switches on and off. But it feels like all the subconscious thoughts just drain out of my brain, and then I'm fresh, and then I can go all night. So yeah, that really resonates with me. Meg had a point she wanted to bring in, so I'm just going to bring her back, and she's got a really cool avatar. I've got to say, Meg,
yeah, that is cool.
Can you give us some context on that image?
Look, that was work Christmas party last year, and
right. Well, you won't be having them again.
Was nautical. So I was, of course, the captain. My role as the captain of the ship. But yes, it was a bit of a fun day that we're not going to be having for a while. So I just had a question about sleep, Herc. In danger of becoming an oversharer, I have been diagnosed with a condition that gives me some chronic pain lately, and I have pain pretty much all night, and it's quite hard to sleep. When you are in pain, if your body is actually going through all of the repair before your brain does, is my brain not getting the sleep that it needs? And is that why I feel so tired every day? Not because I've got a 6-year-old and a full-time job?
The 6-year-old and the full-time job will definitely add to it. And it's not that, when I make these statements, I'm trying to make them in a way that a person who hasn't spent 20 years studying it can actually use it. But no, your brain does get rest all the way through the night as well. But you know, it needs the full kind of complement of sleep. I guess that's a better way of saying it. You know, and the other thing, you know, when you have physical pain, look, it is very difficult because at nighttime, physical pain is often intensified, right? Because there's less distraction. Again, there's less alternative stimulus, you know, and you're lying there and all you can think about is the pain. So what I suggest, it's a difficult problem. So in no way am I, you know, trivializing this. Well, you know what I'm saying, right? But
Yeah,
what
definitely.
is to use that time internally function and to just not focus on the interpretation of the pain, which is what the bad part of the pain is how we interpret the pain. Oh my God, I've got this thing. It's terrible. I'm in pain. I'm such a young person. I shouldn't be having this. I've got people who rely on me. How am I going to get this now? How am I going to do? That's the bit that's keeping us awake.
That's interesting because I do a nightly meditation with Headspace, and it's on pain, and it's actually about not stopping pain, but changing the relationship with pain itself, where you actually go into the pain and focus on it and feel the texture, color, the feelings of it, to be able to actually get to know it, so that you're not trying to kind of push it away or make a narrative around it.
Yeah, and that's exactly right. That's exactly what I was getting to. You know, you've got to separate out the interpretation of the pain, which is laden with emotion and heaviness, and go into internal observation, which is just data. Oh, look, there's pain there. Which sounds, you know, again, not trivializing it, but we're just acknowledging what it is, and you're saying, oh, my pain. What is my pain? What is that thing that I'm looking at? Oh, it looks like a big round thing to me, or it looks like a square thing to me, or it looks like a green thing to me, or it looks like a red thing to me, or whatever your brain puts out there. Because one of the functions of the brain, actually calling out or giving a label, and usually for some reason a 2-word label, to something that is distracting you, annoying you, giving you pain, can often take the power away from it, can literally sort of not stop it, but make your perception of it really, really quite different and easier to have that pain. So for example, sometimes if I'm in a coaching conversation with somebody, they've just walked out of a meeting and they're really, really angry, say, but they've got a 1-hour coaching thing with me. I don't want them spending an hour with me trying to, you know, get over the fact that they're angry with what someone said. I want them to get the value out of that time, right? So what we might do for the first 30 seconds is I might say, give me whatever your brain tells me is a 2-word name for what you're feeling right now. And it could be any 2 words. And sometimes they're completely ridiculous. They mean nothing to anyone other than your brain. They won't necessarily mean anything to you either. Because don't forget, your brain is separate from, you know, the whole self-brain thing is a different conversation, right? So this is your brain, not your whole being or yourself, so to speak. This is your brain. So if your brain says, I don't know, red truck, it may not make any sense to anybody else. But if that's what it wants to spit out in that minute, you just say, that's red truck. And it just takes the sting out of that moment. It's a really interesting technique.
Yes. Just on sleep again, Herc, I know that a few friends of mine, and I've definitely suffered from it in the past, but not so much anymore, suffer a lot from insomnia.
Yeah.
So do you have any hints or anything like that for people who are out of their usual routine? They're out of going and doing the exercise, which gives them the endorphins to feel tired. They're out of routines for going to work and having that stimulus. And their whole kind of routine has changed, and they're now finding it hard to sleep because their brain is just going crazy with all of those thoughts that are talking about how they should be doing more or should be doing less, or, you know, all of those sorts of things. Is there anything you could tell anybody around that?
Yeah, just follow your gorgeous little 6-year-old around and do everything she does for the entire day.
She's currently dressed up as Harry Potter. So that's what's happening right now in our. Oh, actually, Ross is dressed as Harry Potter and she's dressed as
Oh.
as. Hermione.
Yeah. Well, aside from exhausting yourself that way, in all seriousness, what you could do, again, the last time I read literature on sleep, it's not when you go to bed or anything that you do specifically, other than, of course, basic stuff like you must have a dark room that's cool in temperature, not a warm room. You need a room that's cool and dark so that there's no light coming in, there's no street lights coming in, all that kind of stuff. So that's the setting for sleep. Because if you've got things that, light will affect receptors in your eyeballs that connect to your brain, which make you want to wake up. That's why we wake up when the sunrise happens, right? So you want to have all of that down. No devices. So a lot of people, especially now, will be looking at Netflix in bed before they go to bed and stuff like that. If you have, if you can take the blue light out of that, the blue light keeps you awake, and just keep the yellow light, the night light on that helps a lot. But mind you, don't spend all day looking at yellow light, because blue light actually helps serotonin go up in your brain, which keeps you happier, right? So there's a balance of everything. So that's general stuff. But the other thing you can do to reset your clock is to pick a time that you're going to wake up in the morning and make it the same time every day. It has to be the same time every day. And if you add something that you do afterwards to it, like, for example, it might be you wake up early and you do one of these functions. It might be 2 hours of focus time trying to get some project done or whatever. And even if you think you're exhausted and you haven't slept the night before, that's fine. Keep doing it every day, and then your body clock resets because your brain says, okay, this is too hard. Meg wants to get up at this time every morning. I need to get some sleep now, and it resets itself. Right? So it's the waking time that's more important than when you go to bed and stuff. But when you do go to bed, make sure to go back to this idea of physical, environmental stimulus. When you go to your bedroom, your brain should say that really important thing we do in this room is go to sleep, right? Because if you don't do that and you eat in your bed, you work in your bed, you might do something, all that sort of stuff, it's going to be difficult for your brain to really zone that off. Does that make sense?
Yes, that does. Thank you.
I
might pop off now. I probably said too much.
Not at all, Meg. Thank you. Thank you.
I'm still listening in.
Thank you. Fantastic. Great to have you here. And it's great to have all of you here. We've got 14 people at the moment listening live. We're going to leave this up, obviously, and you can go back and listen. Herc, are you right to keep going? Because,
yeah, just right in. Look, if you go to...
Oh, we've lost you. You've gone into the matrix. You've gone... Say that again. Say that again. We lost you with the bandwidth.
Okay, I'm saying if you're just going to the Facebook group, and the easiest way to get there is just type imhercules.community rather than .com. Just go to imhercules.community and it'll take you straight to the Facebook group. Join, become a member, and then in there we'll post everything, lots of, you can put your questions. That's where, if we do another one of these, I don't know when we will be doing another one of these, but if we do another one, we'll put the link in there, the time in there, all that kind of stuff. And just for my own sanity, because at the moment, I don't have time to check emails, 20 different social media platforms, private messages, all that kind of stuff, because I'm on call for the hospital.
Yeah,
so, but I can check one place every day, and I will do that for you guys. If just make it the Facebook group, okay?
Yeah.
So go on Hercules Community. If you go imhercules.community, you'll find it there. And in fact, I'd like people to do one thing for me when they go in there. After you listen to this, either live or if you're looking at the replay, I want you to just, for your own brain health, just type in, make a comment, just one word comment, and either type in the word prison or the word cocoon. Nothing else. You can type anything else you want, of course, but just for you, as a subconscious, I'm making a choice. And doesn't matter if it's going to be perfect. Doesn't matter if we don't know how to do it perfectly. That's, we can talk about that. You can ask me questions about that down the track. So don't worry about the how. But if you knew how, and if you had this moment, which we now have, which we don't normally have, are you committing to a prison that you're hoping you'll be let out of soon? Or are you committing to a cocoon, which you're entering on your own terms for your own reasons and want to emerge from, spread your wings, show your colors and fly? It's really important. Just one word, prison or cocoon. I'd be interested to see.
and emerge as a changed person.
Yeah,
Really?
and to make the point earlier, it's this emergence is really about who you are, because part of the stress of life is not that we don't have stuff. I mean, we don't realize we're so caught up in our own stuff all the time. Right now, or just recently, I don't know if it's over. I haven't looked at the the news from that aspect in a while. There was a swarm of locusts all over Africa, eating all of the food supply for all of those millions of poor people that have nothing to eat now, right? And so there are other things happening on the globe that we're not aware of because we're so stuck inside our own pain. So what I'm saying is, if we're going to have pain and it's a painful moment, are we going to be a victim of it, or are we going to choose the pain we want to have that'll help us increase our frustration tolerance, increase our ability to have more resilience, to have more grit, to be able to achieve things that we haven't achieved before? Because a lot of the dissatisfaction in life is not because we don't have stuff. We have more stuff in our society than most people have on the planet. It's because we don't have the stuff that fills us. And we don't have the stuff that fills us because we can't identify it. And we can't identify it because we're not saying, this is who I am, therefore this is what I need to do, and then I get the thing that fulfills me. We're saying, I'm scared, I don't want this to happen, therefore I have to have this to stop that from happening, therefore I have to do this to be able to have that, and then I become whatever I become, and I rationalize that somehow in my life, and I just push the pain of that inauthenticity into the center of my being, and then kind of give myself comfort zones and addictions and other things to try and counteract that pain. Most of us are doing the second one. I'm saying this is an opportunity to do the first one.
Interesting. I'm going to bring Nathan in. Nathan, let's. How are you going? How's that cocoon? Let's see if we can hear you this time. Hello.
Can you hear me?
You sound like you're in the toilet, to be honest.
Really? Oh, great.
I hope everything's working out for you.
Yeah, it doesn't sound like you have any toilet paper.
No, there's no toilet paper in there. Just use your sleeve. This is resonating with you, Nathan?
It really is. That's actually what I was going to say. It is strongly resonating with me.
You sound very creepy, Nathan, I've got to say.
You say all the right things, Michael.
You've got a lot of echo there.
Really?
Yeah. We can workshop that later.
I'm glad I spent all that money on this fancy equipment.
But this is all making sense to you. Have you got any thoughts you want to bring in?
I have a lot of thoughts. The cocoon metaphor really resonates with me because I've spent the last 6 months already in the cocoon intuitively. What resonated with me was the metaphor of the prison, and I feel a strong sense of resistance with the prison metaphor, whereas with the cocoon I feel this yielding and acceptance of the things that I need to do for myself, to be kind to myself, and all of those things that Herc mentioned, prioritizing sleep and rest and exercise and being in different spaces, physical spaces. These are all things that intuitively I feel directed to do. And the distancing, the solitude has been interesting because for me personally, what the solitude has done has given birth to creativity. And I do see it as an opportunity to be creative and to create the things that I've actually always wanted to do, but have never found the time because I busy myself with all perhaps the wrong things. So it is this big, personally for me, a big reset.
Yeah, I agree with you, Nate. I think the time thing is really important because, as I said before, I don't think you were on the call then. I'm not sure if you heard it, but this whole idea of winning the lotto and winning money, right? In a sense, we've won the time lotto right now. And we need to understand that time is so valuable. It's so valuable. And in some ways more than money.
I agree. As you say, it's a resource.
Exactly. But if we've won in the same way that people who normally don't have a lot of money win money in the lotto and then lose it, unfortunately, and what I'm trying to stop is that now we've won the time lotto, and because people don't understand the value of time, and usually they are out of time and they don't have it, they may lose this time as well, just sitting there in a prison worrying that their time has been robbed of them. Ironically, if they invest that time, the way that a person who wins money from the lotto, if they invest that money, that could be giving them money over a long period of time, right?
Yes.
It's the same with time. If we invest in that time, we can come out the other end with, in a sense, time being given back to us again and again and again with interest. And the way that happens is that the time that we get is deeper, richer, more meaningful, and fulfills us more, gives us a more joyous life, because that's ultimately what hits the spot in the end.
And I suppose I have a question, would you say that, I mean, personally, I think that we choose our thoughts in as much as, we can choose to think that we're in a prison, or we can choose to think we're in a cocoon. And it really is, if we become cognizant of that, we can direct our focus to the thing that is more beneficial to ourselves.
Yeah, I think that statement, I would agree with most of that statement. There's just a little tweak I want to make to that, because that statement is very intuitive, and it makes a lot of sense, and it's true. But the bit that I want to add is this, that by the time we're consciously aware of what we are choosing, it's almost like a trick the brain is playing on us. The brain has already chosen it, And so if you set up your brain in a way that it thinks it's in a prison, you can sit, you can sit there and consciously try to willfully say, no, I'm in a cocoon. I'm going to change. I'm going to make a difference. I'm going to become this amazing. All of that, your brain just doesn't believe it, because for the most time, you're not telling your brain that. So you need to be aware. The reason this moment is important is because it's not just, and I haven't spoken about this today, and maybe, I don't know, maybe I'll talk about it in another one. The whole idea of setting habits takes time. It doesn't take anything else. It takes time. And the habits that we've got going into this moment are not the habits of people who value time. They're the habits of people who are always out of time. So your brain is going to fight you on this. Your brain's going to sit there and say things like, you know what, all this stuff is really, really interesting, but you know what, I'm stressed at the moment, and we don't have this and we don't have that, and normally I do this and I can't do that, and I can't do this, and and I'm now having to sit here. It's hard enough being the one thing I was before, and that's what your brain is going to do for most people, because this whole idea of having complete control of your life and being in a cocoon and choosing your path and all that kind of stuff seems completely ridiculous in the life that we've had. So this whole cocoon is not about you transforming into this most amazing human being per se. That happens with several incarnations of the cocoon. What this moment is about is actually believing and realizing that we can choose what we want, becoming that person that is going to invest the time after all of this is over. Because when all of this is over, if you've done all that wonderful work and you just go back to the same old triggers, within 21 days, you'll have forgotten about it. Your brain will be resisting you. And this is an opportunity, because it usually takes about 60 something days, about 60 to 90 days to set a habit. Mm-hmm. That's why this time is so incredible to me as a neuroscientist. I'm thinking, whoa, because I don't hope that I hope this thing gets over as quickly as possible, but I'm not hoping that we're in that for that long. But what I'm saying is that if we start the habits of being in that space now that we have this moment, and can find the right moment and the right space to continue these things after that's no longer there, when all of this is over, we will have created habits in ourselves that allow our true self to step up and to make choices that it can't make right now, because our scared little self that's trying to get everything done, that thinks it needs to tick all the boxes, is desperately trying to. Does that make sense?
Yeah, no, it really does. And I feel that there needs to be an alignment between, what you're thinking, but actually taking action and addressing your core beliefs and your thoughts, but setting those consistent habits in place And that adage of, do it and then you will feel like doing it. So taking the action is essential.
Yeah, taking the action, but understand your brain will fight you, because most of us are not in the habit of having time, lots of time, that we control from the most authentic part of ourselves. Most of us are running around trying to make time work for a whole bunch of things we think we need to survive, or things we think we need to be, etc., etc., etc. Right? And I see it in my corporate clients all the time. I mean, they're especially under the pump, because there's a lot of pressure on their shoulders, and you can see the stress and the person they're trying to be at work and who they end up becoming, and then what that looks like to their family. Do you know what I mean? And that's just one example. It's not just them, by the way. I see my own colleagues, doctors, nurses, other healthcare professionals. It's all anybody who can rationalize the giving away of that sense of self under the heading of, but I've got really important stuff to do. They're the ones especially at risk, right? And they're the ones whose brains are going to go, oh, God, no, this sounds so... Yeah, I mean, I know, but it's just so airy-fairy and because their brain doesn't want to go there, because it means they have to meet themselves and have to deal with a few things, right? But when they do, they come out the other end as a really, truly empowered person that can make choices, and the way they do their work afterwards is going to be different. Interestingly, I was having a conversation with a surgeon the other day, and he had to go on telehealth, which is this new way of seeing follow-ups, for patients that you don't need to see physically, but they're just coming back for results, et cetera, and normally you'd see them in person. And I said to him, isn't it funny that we would never think to do that before? But now, at the end of this, how many doctors are going to actually be seeing people physically when they can quickly hop on a call, a video conference call, and tell people their results and book a time and make sure they're okay? It's going to change.
Systems are going to change. Yeah.
Do you see what I mean? But before, when we're chasing our tail, trying to be really busy all the time, we didn't think of that. But we're thinking of it now, and it's not that we thought of it as a solution. We didn't realize we had a problem. Yeah. But suddenly we've stopped for long enough to realize that, we can buy some time back.
Yeah.
Interesting, isn't it?
Thank you, Nath. We might wrap up shortly, I think. Thanks for your time, Nathan. I'm just going to drop you out of the unless you wanted to add something.
Oh, no, I was just saying it's a pleasure to join you both, and thanks very much. Look forward to
hopefully we'll do something in the near future with yourself, and we can hear your dulcet tones on the piano. That's another podcast. Thanks, Nath. So Herc, we'll wrap up fairly shortly. I think people have got to have dinner and so on and so forth. But is there anything you wanted to say just to surmise and looking ahead, and maybe we've had a few requests about doing this again, so we might do another one. Some people have shown interest in us doing it again. This was an experiment on our part, I should say. Herc and I decided let's just do this and see how it works, because you were getting a lot of requests from.
Yeah, and it was difficult to just get people individually. And so, here's the funny thing, I've wanted to do something like this for a long time, never did. And here I am doing it. This moment provided this opportunity. So I'm incredibly grateful, because, I'm going through this process as much as everyone else. I'm just grateful to have some people on that journey now who want to make those kinds of changes in their life, and to realize that you don't need to know everything. It's not about knowing stuff. It's not about knowing, it's about being, but it's about an awareness. It's awareness of self and what's important to you. And to use this moment, go back. I'm not going to, in the interest of time, I'm not going to go back and reiterate. I think we've said everything. You can listen back to this, replay at any time, and look at the different types of things that your brain wants you to do for it, right?
Yeah.
And to respect that, and once you do that and show the brain that kind of love, it's going to show you some love back, and you will get some insights. You will get some understandings that you couldn't get before, that may have been, obvious if you'd stop to think about it, but now are going to be really obvious. And if your brain is not in a stressed space, it'll be in a space where it can create little, experiments around that, and little ways to start being that way and to do things around that and all of that. And that's exciting, and that'll keep you happy through this very, very, very difficult time. like I said, the doctor and me can't help myself. Please, please stay safe. Follow the guidelines, as oppressive as they seem to all of us, free loving people. They are for our own safety. This thing is real. As we have seen around the world, so many people, hundreds of thousands of people will die globally by the end of this, which is a huge, huge tragedy. I mean, that's the kind of numbers you get from a war, It's a serious, serious thing. Please don't become a statistic. Just prevention is better than cure. Stay safe, keep your family safe, and, use this time to become not a better person, but to just find the person that you are, because that's good for you and it's good for everybody else too.
And also, it should be said too, we're incredibly cognizant that everyone is doing it tough in their own way, in varying ways. I mean, I'm hearing some terrible stories, and I'm, when people ask me, "Oh, how are you, Michael?" I say, "Look, relatively speaking, I'm okay." We are cognizant that people are really going through some very hard times. I mean, people who can't get to funerals, just all sorts of things. So, we have got that very much at the forefront of our minds as we talk about these things. But yeah, hopefully today some of this advice has helped. And some of the feedback we're getting in the comments is, people are finding this very helpful and so on. So look, I think this would be a good idea to do again, Herc, don't you?
Yeah, sure. I just don't, know about timing and stuff, because at the moment, like I said, everything's a little bit up in the air. I'm on call. And so please forgive us if we say we're doing something and then we have to change the time. I'm sure everyone will understand if we need to change the time last minute or something like that. And let us know what time you prefer as well.
Yeah.
We're not guessing about that. Your rhythms, what you want to do. And, if we get enough people wanting to do something at a particular time, we'll try to match that and make, people happy so they can be on the show and all that sort of stuff,
And also what people want to hear. I mean, if
any question
people want to develop ideas, then we'll go for it.
Absolutely.
Fantastic. Well, thank you, Herc, for your time. You be safe. You're going into hospital environments, so please be safe.
Yep, I'm doing everything that I possibly can. And what's interesting too, I mean, we're being checked every day. Basically, we can't enter the hospital without being temperature checked and all sorts of stuff. So, in a sense, I feel that I'm in a community of people that are very, very aware of the dangers of this, and are doing everything that they can to stop other staff from getting sick, and from, of course, any patients from getting sick.
Yeah. Fantastic. Thank you to everyone in the chat. Thank you, everyone, for listening. And we will let you know in that group there, that I Am Hercules community group, when we're doing the next one. And
just go to imhercules.community. It's just easier. It's just a URL, and that'll take you to the Facebook group. Join it, because that's the only place I'm going to be checking and posting in, to keep me sane through all of this, because then I can check it as I go. It's on my phone. I can look at it between, even at the hospital, I can, if I've got a 5-minute break, I can look at something, answer it, that sort of thing.
No worries. Thanks again for your time, and look after yourselves, everybody, and we'll hopefully talk to you soon. Bye for now.
Yeah. Okay. Thanks, everyone. See ya. Bye.
Big thanks to Nathan for the use of his music, by the way.